With the constant trend of modern media insisting on consistently shooting itself in the foot, making sure that no matter what it does, nobody's going to enjoy it, it just boggles the mind that with the release of HBO's The Last of Us, they decided not to fix anything. They knew exactly what was going to happen, they knew exactly what the reaction was going to be with every single scene in The Last of Us, and they decided that the best course of action was just to steer straight and allow for what is going to happen, to the point that even industry experts are trying to come out here and defend it, protect the claim that it's just review bombing or whatever, saying that it's worse review bombing than they ever saw for the second game, which is just a load of hoopla, with people coming out here and insisting that if you don't like it, go touch grass, or if you're going to complain about the wokeness, just shut up and watch the show, which no one is doing, and that's the problem. Everybody dropped The Last of Us Season 2 like a sack of potatoes, or like Joel after being beaten by a 9-iron. People don't like when you fuck with their characters, and they don't like when you fuck with their stories, and this is exactly what happens. No, Paul Tassi, you're not getting review bombed. And what's even funnier is the fact that the people who obsess over The Last of Us, who think that Ellie's lesbianism is something phenomenal, and think that this story is God's gift to Earth, and that Neil Druckmann is the second coming of literary Christ, believing that his stories will save lives and all that shit. Well, even when the people like Kotaku try to come out and defend it, they've got shit all to say. Such as the only positives they could even think to bring up is why The Last of Us fans are freaking out about Pearl Jam this week, how the only thing worth celebrating is a shitty band from the 80s. Or that the only saving grace of this upcoming episode is that The Last of Us fans celebrate the temporary return of their TV peepaw next week. The next week's episode ended with a "Hey Kiddo" heard around the world, as these people, because of the fact that they clearly don't have any father figures in their real life, have to rely on fictional ones to get any kind of satisfaction. And because of the fact that this show is just blatantly these losers' emotional support TV show, it's no wonder that people are, of course, coming out for the same defenses. And so, according to Paul Tassi, it's nothing more than review bombing that's tanking this terrible show. As Forbes, Paul Tassi claims The Last of Us is getting review bombed and ignores evidence to the contrary written by John F. Trent. Forbes writer Paul Tassi recently claimed that the HBO's The Last of Us Season 2 is being review bombed, but he notably completely ignores IMDb scores, which shows the opposite to be the case, in an article titled HBO's The Last of Us Review Bomb Surpassing the Game's Review Bombing, basically making the argument that the show is getting more maligned than the game had ever been. Tassi claims that the show's second season is being review bombed, given the audience score has declined to 45% on Rotten Tomatoes compared to the first season's 87% audience score. And while you can claim review bombing, hear me out, Paul. This might be a great idea, probably a foreign one to you. Maybe the problem is just that the show's bad. Now, to be clear, I've never liked The Last of Us. I thought the games were equally overrated, and therefore I didn't even bother with the first season of the show, because I was never impressed by the game to begin with. But Tassi specifically blames the culture war writing, the anti-woke war. There's just no way around this. It's a factor. Exceptionally mean critiques about Ramsey's appearance, hate based on the same-sex romance between Ellie and Dina, which bloomed in full last week, and more generally covering entertainment for a living. I've simply seen this sort of thing escalate even over the last 3 years since Season 1, and wildly ramped up after the recent election. You can easily peruse the negative reviews and see these complaints. Okay, Paul, let me explain a few things to you. First of all, Ellie being a character who has an established appearance, and Bella Ramsey looking nothing like it, especially when we've got a whole bunch of up-and-comer actresses, a bunch of cosplayers, and a bunch of random people who do a really good job of mimicking the look of Ellie. We've got people who, without trying too hard, can actually look like it, and then we've got Bella Ramsey, who looks like she's pancaked her own face. She doesn't have the option of looking like Ellie, and yes, that means she is not qualified to play Ellie. Looks matter. A person's appearance is definitive to the character. It's something about them. Ellie is supposed to look young, youthful, and look naive. Bella Ramsey just looks like she got hit by one short chromosome. And then you're out here complaining about how people are saying and review bombing it just because of lesbianism. Well, John of Trent might have an issue with the LGBT romances. As a bisexual myself, there's plenty of place to have it in this. The problem is, this is one of the most disrespectful and distasteful romances out there. For starters, in a post-apocalyptic world, there wouldn't be lesbianism because you need too many kids to be produced. And at least whatever the cum slut that she's dating is actually producing a child, unlike Ellie, who's sitting around and waging her own one-man war against men. All because because no man can live up to the father figure that she's built up in her head. Nobody particularly cares about the fact that there's a lesbian relationship in The Last of Us. They care that it's really badly written and is honestly kind of disrespectful to normal relationships. The way that her girlfriend is pregnant and then she says, I'm gonna be a dad, even though the child already has a dad who, from the clips I've seen of the show, so I might be wrong here, it looks like the dad's going to be involved. So no, Bella Ramsey, you're not going to be a dad. You're going to be the creepy wineout who's got a few too many cats. And what's even more impressive, Paul Tassi, is you mentioned this fact that you've seen these things ramping up over the last few years ever since Season 1 has aired. So why are you surprised? We know exactly what happened to The Last of Us 2. It was a terribly written game that had maligned every single one of the fans, and the only people who liked it are industry shills who has to suck good old Druckmann's dick to get any kind of access. We knew from day one exactly how this show is going to go. We knew for a matter of fact that this show was going to fail so badly. And yet you guys still stayed course. You didn't change. You didn't reassess. You didn't think maybe we shouldn't 9-iron one of the most impressive male characters in a franchise as soon as we get the chance to. You shouldn't be shocked to see that this hate, which is just called criticism, has escalated over the last 3 years because we knew it was coming when we knew what was going to happen. The only way to avoid this kind of criticism was to not keep the story from The Last of Us 2. Now, Tassi's entire analysis is based on Rotten Tomato scores, which, as of writing, currently sits at a rotten 41% on the popcorn meter, the renamed audience score. However, if one looks at scores at IMDb, it is apparent that the review bombing is not happening for Season 2. In fact, it looks like at least one of the Culture War episodes that Tassi cites received higher scores than the other episodes. The second episode, where Joel is killed, has a 9.3 out of 10 with 48,000 reviews. That's 16,000 more reviews than the first episode. If review bombing were happening, as Tassi claims, then one would expect the second episode to have much lower score. And as you can see, oh my god, bright mode. Good lord. Trent, I'm begging you, just use dark mode. Actually, this isn't a Trent issue. IMDb doesn't support dark mode. There's no way to get the screen dark, so I apologize for the flashbang. But as you see here, 7.4 with 32k, 9.3 out of 10 with 48k, 7.1 with 20k, 6.5 out of 10 with 23k, 7.8 out of 10 with 5.1k. The episode 2, where Joel dies, which is far too early in the show, has such a significant spike in reviews that it's nothing but review bombing. And in fact, Tassi blaming Culture War reviews is actually a great place to look. Let's see if he's even remotely accurate or has done any of his due diligence. I'm trying to get this fit. It's not going to fit. Okay, so now the popcorn meter is sitting at 41, meaning it's dropped an additional % for the audience reactions. Let's go in here and let's just look up the word lesbian and see if anyone leaves any negative comments. Oh, look, nothing with the word lesbian. How about woke? There is one review, another masterpiece, video game, desecrated because of the woke plague. I really hope you're not calling I really hope you're not calling The Last of Us 2 a masterpiece, but you do you. Some other ones: terrible, bad acting, poor story, cringy, what a joke, white men evil, little girls taking out grown men, lol. Doesn't reflect the source material, just the same drummed up narrative to try and skew people's morality, sad. This show is unwatchable without Joel, big drop off from Season 1. Season 1's okay, not great, but this is just unwatchable, dull, and boring. The dialogue is just awful. So I just read down a line of comments, and only 2 of them mentioned anything slightly cultural. Now let's check to see if any of these has the word ugly in them. Oh, would you look at that? None of them, let me move my face so you can actually see, not a single one of them mentions that Ellie is ugly. That's not in the reviews. Alright, I just went in and I loaded a ton more things, so let's look at these words again. Whoa, there's 4 references now. You guys knew this game was a masterpiece, but the show, it just felt so poorly thought out. Only a few scenes were actually good, most of it was just cringe and straight up horrible. It honestly feels like an insult to the loyal fans of the game. Effing woke propaganda. It feels like a message than an actual meaningful story. You have lowered your standards of cinema drastically. It's insane, lol, disappointed. Another, already read that one. This one, there's nothing there. Thank you for showing me nothing there. HBO or whoever's in charge of the show's narrative, you guys seriously dropped the ball. The casting choice, poor and cringe acting, the overall story direction, it's all a mess. You've lowered your standards just to push forced woke propaganda. And so, as you see, there's very few of them that actually mention that. Let's see if any of them mention lesbian in here. If I can spell lesbian. Nope, none there. Let's see about ugly. We've got just one mentioning the word ugly in it, and it won't even show me it. Thank you, Rotten Tomatoes, for being cooperative. And this actually brings up a really important thing. We're going to look at Paul Tassi's article in a little bit, but as you'll see, he provides absolutely no sources to back up any of his claims for the woke brigade review bombing, because it just simply doesn't exist. These people aren't really out there. There's very few of them who are using the woke criticisms against it. Very few people maligning Bella Ramsey on the Rotten Tomatoes to trash the score. Now, Trent continues, what's more likely is that much like the second video game, audiences do not like the story choices made for the second season and are clearly expressing it over on Rotten Tomatoes. It also looks like people are expressing that on IMDb, albeit not to the same extent, and it appears there was a concerted effort to boost the score of the second episode, where Joel dies, compared to the other episodes. In fact, the episode has over 32,000 10 out of 10 scores, which is 67.2 of all review scores. I'm no expert in review bombing, but it seems to be that when one episode has a whole significantly higher score and a lot more reviews than the rest of them, that seems a bit more like a brigade to me. But when you can count review inflation as nothing more than marketing costs, people can get away with it because they have the budget in the show to buy out bot reviews. But let's give Paul Tassi a little bit of the benefit of the doubt in one of the worst structured articles I've ever had the displeasure of reading on Forbes. First of all, just look at the structure of this. There's so much empty space, a lot of, I don't even know what's supposed to go there, and the text is incredibly small while stretching across the entire screen. This is just completely unreadable. And what's most shocking is that not even all of that is meant to take up space for ads, with only one ad appearing there, one ad appearing down here. This is just a horribly structured website. But what does the Paul Tassi has to say? The Last of Us Season 2 is now heading into the final half of its rather short 7-episode season. That's a miniseries, not a season, and things have been somewhat different this time around. The first season of the show was praised for embodying the game well, outside of a few critiques, and critics and fans essentially agreed on its quality, a 96% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes and an 87% audience score. Season 2, well, something's changed. Well, yeah, duh, that's called the quality of the source material. As it stands, Season 2 has a nearly matched 95% critic score to Season 1. Paul Tassi, I know you're an industry shill yourself, but you really need to understand that nobody gives two shakes of rat's ass with the critic score. Nobody trusts them. Well, the audience score has dropped to a full 45% compared to Season 2, and is now down to 42%, and now 41% as I showed. This is ironically something that mirrors what happened with the games, which received sky-high critic scores, a 93% on Metacritic, and it went on to be one of the most awarded games of all time, assuming that means anything, which if you know anything about gaming, you know that critics and rewards are completely pointless. They're fallacious and have nothing to do with actual quality. Contrast with the 5.8 out of 10 user score. Now the sinking of the show's second season has blown by even that low watermark. And you know, it doesn't have to be a criticism about wokeness or review bombing. Maybe the show's just fucking bad. Now, what I find funny is Paul Tassi goes on to say, what's going on? Some complaints are different than the game, some are the same, some are just sort of confusing. Let's go through the different aspects of this, not necessarily say any are valid. Well, I'll throw my weight behind one, but just reporting what's happening. Now, if he had any kind of journalistic integrity, he'd be honest about a lot of these, but instead he insists on poisoning the well and ad homineming these criticisms instead of engaging with them in good faith. So his first criticism he levies is that Bella Ramsey's Ellie. There's of course, Ramsey doesn't look like game Ellie complaint, but that was also true in Season 1 and it didn't result in these bottomed out scores. An evolved complaint now is that Ramsey doesn't look like the 5 years older Ellie like the character is supposed to after the time jump. Even though Ramsey is older than that in real life, one refrain is that Ramsey should have been recast for Season 2. In additional complaints, Ramsey is acting differently, usually more upbeat than game Ellie. I don't know why you just completely throw away this argument claiming that it didn't impact Season 1 when it did. A lot of the comments were, the show's great, but Bella Ramsey isn't Ellie. That was a common criticism of Season 1 of the show. But here's another neat little fact about these kind of things. It takes a lot of things for a show to be well received and a lot of things for a show to be poorly received. And if you've got 5 good things and 1 bad thing, people will usually let the 1 bad thing slide. But when you've got maybe at best 2 good things and a whole lot of bad things, people are going to comment on every single bad thing, letting them stack up because you did. Joel's death, this is an obvious one, as a large number of players hated the early execution of Joel, a beloved character and the playable lead of the first game. Here it stood to reason that a number of show watchers would hate that decision as well. However, it should be noted that these low scores began with episode 1, and while they have sunk lower since, this is something that happened from the start before his death, so it's not like its sole explanation, though it is certainly cited in many more recent reviews. Tassi, you can't be this retarded, can you? Isn't it clear that people saw the writing on the wall? They knew he was going to die in episode 2, partially because of story leaks, but also because you set it up in episode 1 of season 2. Maybe people knew it was coming and they reviewed it in accordance, and maybe, which you never say, by the way, he never lists it, maybe it's that the story is just badly written, the dialogue is poorly written, and the characters are poorly realized, and nothing fits anymore. Another criticism he brings up is the Abby changes. This one aspect I actually agree with. I think the changes made to Abby, both in terms of her physical size and the way her origin story was immediately explained, was a poor decision and made the entire murder less impactful. The show has now abandoned Abby for the duration of the season, and if they were going to do that, similarly to the game, they should have just left her full story a mystery. I don't think this was the most well handled, and it's a key part of the story. I like how the one criticism he endorses is he somehow tries to turn into a positive, because Paul Tassi can't help but to shill. And of course, let me spoil something. You were never going to find an Abby who looked like the game Abby, because people actually looked. The body model for Abby in The Last of Us 2 was actually a male body model that they just added slight lumps on the chest to. That's all it was. It's literally impossible for a female to have the body of Abby, because Abby had a man's body. Other changes, that was perhaps a major one, but other complaints have cropped up about other issues. Tommy in particular has been a focus, given a battle scene in town instead of being present when Joel died. Additionally, the idea that he left before Ellie to get revenge himself seems to have been scrapped, so far as we know anyway. And then of course, this is the one I mentioned earlier, the anti-woke war. There's just no way around this. It's a factor. Exceptionally mean critiques, because you gotta mark them as being exceptionally mean instead of just accurate. About Ramsey's appearance, hate based on the same-sex romance between Ellie and Dina, show it or didn't happen, which bloomed in full last week, and more generally covering entertainment for a living, I've simply seen this sort of thing escalate even over the last 3-ish years since season 1, and while he ramped up after recent election, you can easily peruse the negative reviews and see these complaints. I did that. We didn't see them. And then the final one, positives. Dina, everyone loves Isabel Mercedes' new Dina. I haven't seen anyone talk about it at all. He then says, I can agree that perhaps Season 2 hasn't been as good or impactful as Season 1. Is it absolutely giant drop in quality? No, it's not. And again, if you're a gamer, you lived through something more or less identical to this in 2020, substituting making fun of Ellie's appearance for Abby's appearance, among other things, the ever-controversial Joel death. There's not going to be anything to change these scores significantly now, but this was predictable enough, and here we are. So if you knew this was coming, if you knew the writing was on the wall, why are you saying that you're shocked it's happening? Why are you pretending like it's some severe thing, some crazy thing that has come to fruition? Every time it's a repeated story, and every time they make the same mistake, and every time they have to blame the fans who aren't watching. Somehow, it's always your fault, it's always your problem, it's always because of you that it's bad. And it's never once the people who make it who are held accountable. Maybe it really is because Bella Ramsey is just a bad actress who's got a shitty cat scratch, so you know she's a lesbian. Maybe it's the fact that they took a beloved character who was beloved in the games, and then maintained to be beloved in the first season of the show, and then you night-ironed him in the most disrespectful way possible. Maybe it's just the bad writing, or maybe it's just the fact that you don't know what you're doing at all. But no, these industry shills have to come out and, well, shill and pretend like it's the greatest thing to ever exist. We've seen it once, we've seen it before, we saw it with The Last of Us games, and we'll see it a million times more. What else is there to say about it? But that's pretty much all I've got. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this, and I will see you guys on the next one.